You know that feeling when you have a business idea or even just a project at work, and it feels like you're staring into a black box? You have this gut instinct, this passion, but you have absolutely no idea if it's going to work. The traditional advice is usually something like just trust your gut, or if you build it, they will come, which honestly is terrible advice. It's basically gambling.
It is gambling. It's treating entrepreneurship like alchemy. You throw a bunch of stuff in a pot money, code, marketing, stir it up, and just hope you get gold. But what we're exploring today is a shift away from alchemy and toward physics. We're looking at a framework that says innovation isn't about magic, it's about management.
But not the kind of management involving suits and five-year plans, right? We're deep diving into the lean startup methodology. And specifically, we are walking through the visual blueprint of how this machine actually works. The mission here is pretty bold, taking the extreme uncertainty of a new venture and processing it into a sustainable business.
And that phrase, extreme uncertainty, that's the whole key. If you look at the way this framework conceptualizes the startup journey, it starts with total chaos. Imagine a tangled mess of squiggly lines. That's your brain, that's the market, that's your product idea. It's just messy.
It looks like my headphones when I pull them out of my pocket. Just a knot.
Exactly. And most people try to untangle that knot by guessing. But this approach forces that chaos through a funnel. It's a mechanism. And inside that funnel, you have three gears: build, measure, and learn. You don't just do stuff. You feed the chaos into these gears, and if you do it right, what comes out the other side isn't just a product. It's a straight arrow pointing up that represents a sustainable business.
So the goal isn't just to launch. The goal is to build a machine that learns. But this requires a completely different mindset than running a normal company, right? Because the guide contrasts general management with entrepreneurial management, and they look like two different species.
They are. Think of general management. It's linear. It relies on history, forecasting, and order. If you're opening the 5,000th McDonald's, you use general management. You know exactly how many burgers you'll sell. You have a playbook.
Right. The graph goes up and to the right in a nice, clean, straight line. It's comfortable.
So comfortable. But entrepreneurial management is for when you don't have a history. It acknowledges that the beginning is going to be that scribbled mess we talked about. You are searching for a business model, not executing one you already have.
And that leads to the definition this framework uses for a startup. It defines it as a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
I want to double click on that. Extreme uncertainty. That is the variable that changes everything. If you are in a situation where you don't know who the customer is or what the product should be, you cannot use standard management tools. You can't make a 5-year forecast when you don't know if you'll be alive in 5 months.
So if the old tools don't work, what are the new ones? The framework lays out 5 core principles.
Okay, first, entrepreneurs are everywhere. This isn't just for, guys in hoodies in Silicon Valley. You can be an entrepreneur inside a massive corporation, an intrapreneur, if you're operating in that uncertainty zone.
Which means entrepreneurship is management. It's not just winging it. It's a specific kind of discipline.
Exactly. Then you have validated learning. This is the metric of progress. In a normal company, progress is, we built the thing. In lean startup, progress is, we learned what the customer actually wants.
Which happens through the build, measure, learn loop. And finally, innovation accounting, which we'll get to, but it's basically how you keep score when your revenue is 0.
Right, but before you start keeping score, you need to know where you stand. The framework visualizes this as a pyramid, the strategy pyramid.
Okay, so picture a triangle. At the bottom, the wide base is the vision. Then the middle is the strategy, and the tiny tip at the top is the product. Now, I usually think of the product as the most important thing, but this flips it.
It totally does. The vision, the why, is the foundation. And interestingly, the guide notes that the vision rarely changes. You want to revolutionize transportation. Okay, that's the vision. That stays rock solid.
But the middle layer, the strategy, that's fluid.
That's where the pivot happens. If your current strategy to revolutionize transportation is flying cars and, physics says no, you change the strategy. You don't abandon the vision. And at the top, the product is constantly changing. That's optimization.
So you're stubborn about the vision, but totally flexible on the details.
Precisely. But here is the trap. Most founders just start building the product at the top of the pyramid without testing the strategy in the middle. They skip the validation.
And the guide calls this validated learning over execution. It uses a bridge analogy here. You're trying to cross a canyon of uncertainty. You don't just start pouring concrete and hope it reaches the other side.
No, you have to test the pillars first. These are called the leap of faith assumptions. The two massive pillars holding up your business. First, the value hypothesis. Do people actually want this? Does it solve a real problem?
And second, the growth hypothesis. If they want it, can we get more of them?
Mm.
Can it scale?
You have to test those pillars before you build the bridge deck. If the value hypothesis is false, if nobody wants it, it doesn't matter how beautiful the bridge is. You're building a bridge to nowhere.
So how do we test those pillars without spending a fortune? That brings us to the engine of this whole thing,
Yeah.
the build, measure, learn feedback loop. Now, it looks like a circle. Ideas lead to building, which leads to measuring, which leads to learning.
But here's the counterintuitive part. When you are planning, you run the loop in reverse.
Wait, reverse. So I start with learning.
Yes. You don't start with, what can I build? You start with, what do I need to learn right now?
Hmm.
Then you ask, what data do I need to learn that? And then you ask, what is the smallest thing I can build to get that data?
That is completely backward to how most of us work. Usually we have an idea, we get excited, we build it, and then we look at the data later to see if we were right.
That's the vanity approach. The scientific approach is working backward from the hypothesis. And once you figure out what to build, you go forward. Build, measure, learn. And the speedometer on this loop is crucial. Success isn't about how many features you ship. It's about minimizing the total time through the loop.
Speed of learning beats speed of coding.
Every single time.
But this brings up a practical problem. If I need to learn fast, I can't take 6 months to perfect a product. I have to use a minimum viable product, or MVP. And I have to be honest, I struggle with this concept. The guide shows a contrast between a traditional launch, which is this complex, high waste factory, and the MVP.
And what does it use to represent the MVP?
A skateboard, just a simple skateboard. But here's my issue. If I'm promising a client a luxury car and I roll up on a skateboard, I'm going to get fired. Doesn't releasing an unfinished product damage your reputation?
Yeah, that is the most common fear. But the skateboard isn't about shipping junk. It's about testing the fundamental premise. If your assumption is people want to get from point A to point B faster than walking, the skateboard tests that behavior. It doesn't test the air conditioning or the leather seats.
So it's not a bad version of the product. It's the simplest version that creates learning.
Exactly. The guide lists examples like a concierge service. Maybe instead of coding a complex AI to pick outfits for people, you go to their house and pick the outfits yourself. You do it manually. It doesn't scale, but it validates if the human wants the service at all.
Or a paper prototype, or just a landing page. I guess that makes sense. You're trading polish for truth. You want to know the truth before you polish it.
If you cannot fail, you cannot learn. You build the skateboard to see if people fall off.
Okay, so we've built our skateboard, we put it out there, now we need to know if it's working. This is innovation accounting. The guide shows a control panel with two options. On the left, we have vanity metrics.
The enemy.
I admit it, I love these. The graph goes up and to the right, total users, total downloads, total hits. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Why are these so bad?
Because they're a lie. I mean, they feed your ego, not your business. Total users always goes up unless people are literally, dying. It tells you nothing about what's happening right now. It doesn't tell you if you're actually creating value.
So what's the alternative?
Actionable metrics. The guide visualizes this as a funnel or a cohort analysis. You're looking at per customer data, visitors to buy the shoe, signups to activated to retained.
So instead of saying we have 1 million users, you say of the 100 people who signed up last week, 2% came back today.
Exactly. That 2% is the truth. It might hurt, but it's actionable. If it's low, you know exactly where the problem is. Innovation accounting follows 3 steps. Establish the baseline, where are we now? Tune the engine, try to improve that 2% to 3%, and then pivot or persevere.
This is the moment of truth. The guide visualizes a mechanism on a track. You're moving along, testing your strategy. If the data says your hypothesis is correct, people love the skateboard, you persevere. You keep going.
But if the data says no, if that retention rate is flatlining, you have to pivot. And the definition is vital here. A pivot is a change in strategy without a change in vision.
The image is a foot anchored to the ground. That's the vision, while the other foot shifts direction. But let's get specific, because pivot has become this buzzword that people use when they just mean we panicked. The guide actually has a catalog of pivots, like a menu.
It is a menu, and you need to pick the right one. For example, the zoom-in pivot. Imagine you build a complex project management tool, but you notice everyone just uses the chat feature.
So you throw away the rest and just build the chat app. The feature becomes the product.
Correct. That zoom in. The zoom out pivot is the reverse. You realize your chat app is too small of a feature to sustain a business, so it becomes just one part of a larger suite.
Then there's the customer segment pivot. This one feels painful. It's when you realize you built a great product, but for the wrong people.
Right. You thought you were building for teenagers, but it turns out corporate lawyers love it. You have to pivot your entire marketing and positioning to chase the real customer.
And the customer need pivot. This is when you realize the problem you're solving isn't actually a big deal to the customer, but because you're close to them, you discover a real problem they have.
And that requires immense humility. You have to admit your original idea was wrong, but because you were listening, you found the right idea.
There are others too. Platform pivot, value capture pivot, which is just changing how you get paid. The point is, pivoting isn't failing. It's a controlled course correction.
It's using the scientific method. A failed experiment is only a failure if you don't learn from it.
Now, to do this, to pivot, to test, iterate, you need speed. The guide talks about the power of small batches, and he uses a story about stuffing envelopes that I actually tried once.
The envelope game. Oh, it's a classic. You have 100 letters. You need to fold, stuff, and seal them. Our intuition says, fold all 100, then stuff all 100, then seal all 100. It feels like an assembly line.
It feels efficient. You get into a rhythm. But the guide calls this large batch thinking, and it says it's actually inefficient. Why?
Because of the error rate. What if you fold all 100 letters, and then when you go to stuff them, you realize they don't fit in the envelopes? You have now wasted 100 folds. You have to redo everything.
Right, whereas with small batch or a single piece flow, you fold one, stuff one, seal one. If it doesn't fit, you know immediately. You waste one envelope, not 100.
And in software, this is continuous deployment.
Yeah.
You don't save up code for 6 months and release version 2.0. You deploy code 50 times a day. If there's a bug, you catch it instantly. The batch size is 1.
That makes the system incredibly responsive. Okay, so we have a responsive system. We have our product. Now we need to grow. The guide outlines the 3 engines of growth, and this is where the math kicks in.
These are the mechanisms of sustainable growth, and you usually pick one to focus on. First, the sticky engine.
Stickiness. This is all about retention.
Right. The rule here is simple. New customer acquisition must exceed the churn rate. If you lose 50% of your customers every month, you can't grow unless you're adding 51%. If you track nothing else, track churn.
Then there's the viral engine. This is the referral loop, and the math relies on the viral coefficient.
Which has to be greater than 1.0. That's the magic number. If every customer brings in exactly 1 friend, that's a 1.0, you grow linearly. If they bring in 1.1 friends, you grow exponentially. If it's 0.9, the virus dies out.
That sounds aggressive. The virus dies out, but it's true. And finally, the paid engine. This is where you just buy the growth. Advertising.
But you can't just throw money at it. There is a strict equation. Customer lifetime value, or CLV, must be greater than your cost per acquisition, your CPA. If you make $50 profit from a customer over their life, but it costs you $51 in ads to get them,
You're paying to go bankrupt.
exactly, you are scaling your losses.
Can I use all 3 engines at once? Can I be sticky, viral, and paid?
You can try, but it usually creates chaos. Successful startups usually tune one engine to perfection before layering on others.
Focus. I like it. But even with focus, things break. Servers crash, features fail. The guide ends with a section on the adaptive organization and the 5 whys. Now, I've heard of this, but it often sounds like a toddler just asking why. Why?
It is exactly that, but structured. It's a root cause analysis tool. The example in the guide is, a new release disabled a feature. A typical manager screams, fix the server, and maybe fires the intern. But the 5 whys asks, 1, why did the feature fail? Because the server failed. 2, why did the server fail? Because an obscure subsystem was used. 3, why was it used? Because the engineer didn't know how to use it properly. 4, why didn't he know? Because he was never trained. 5, why wasn't he trained? Because the manager hasn't prioritized training documentation.
Whoa. So the problem isn't the server. The problem is the manager's training program.
Exactly. The 5 whys moves you from blaming people to fixing processes. The rule is, be tolerant of all mistakes the first time, but never allow the same mistake to be made twice. You fix the root cause, so it can't happen again.
That feels like a huge culture shift. It stops people from hiding their mistakes.
And that's necessary for speed. You can't learn fast if everyone is hiding the data.
So let's zoom out and look at the whole roadmap. We started with chaos. We anchored ourselves with a vision. We took a leap of faith. We steered through the build, measure, learn loop. We pivoted when necessary. We tuned our engine of growth. And finally, we built an adaptive organization.
And emerged from the funnel with a sustainable business.
The call to action at the end of the guide is pretty direct. Stop wasting time. Stop building things nobody wants.
It's the ultimate efficiency, isn't it? There is nothing more wasteful than doing something efficiently that shouldn't have been done at all.
That hits hard. So here's a thought for you listening right now. We talked about vanity metrics in business. Those numbers that make you feel good but mean nothing. What are the vanity metrics in your own life?
That's a great question. Is it the number of hours you sit at your desk? Is it how many unread emails you cleared?
Exactly. Does clearing your inbox actually move your life forward, or does it just feel like progress? Maybe you need to apply the 5 whys to your own to-do list.
And be brave enough to pivot if the answer is this isn't working.
Science isn't just for the lab. Thanks for diving in with us.
Keep experimenting.